week's episode of the Dog and Bandits. I'm Orrin Phillips, and today we have one of the best in the world. Let's talk about José Marzan Jr., one of the best inkers in the world. He has worked on so many incredible titles from the 1980s to the present. Action Comics, Peter Ken Thunderbolt, Why the Last Man, Devil Dinosaur, and Moon Girl. All sorts of books throughout the years. He is one of the nicest people you will meet. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I got to see him at Terrificon a couple of weeks back. It was so nice to meet him in person. So here we go. Here is Jose. Jose Marzan Jr. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So the first question we ask everybody is, how did you first discover comics?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be ready for this one. Discover, I guess it's two phases.
Mhm.
There were always, there was the old Superman, Batman TV shows and the Spider-Man cartoon in the 70s, so I knew that stuff. And comics were kind of around where you have comics when you go to the doctor with your mom to keep quiet. So I know there was a old X-Men
Mhm.
reprints, the old reprint ones, and that Nick Cardy Superman cover where he's turning into diamonds.
Right.
Um, but the real click, and there were always comics trickling in.
Mhm.
You know, my mom would buy one here and there, but I think there was that fateful day where I was sick at home and my mom brought me some markers and an issue of Captain America,
Mhm.
one of the Nomad issues.
Okay.
It's like 170 something, 180 something. I think it's Cap, or no, it's Nomad jumping, and I think he's fighting Viper
Okay.
and the Serpent Squad. It's like, oh, this stuff is great. And then I had the luck to find some of the next issues hit or miss.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just kind of little by little. And then I came out of Jaws and I bought an Invaders 2. I
Mhm.
say I bought it, they bought it for me, my mom or my sister or somebody. So yeah, that's how it started. It was just, those few comics led to, you know, boxes and boxes of this stuff.
So, I mean, I'll get into this in a second, but at what point do you decide, you know what, maybe this is a career I want to focus on or something I'd like to do as a profession?
I don't know. I know I was one of those kids who was always drawing.
Mhm.
I was the one of the kids who was always doing the school play cover and that kind of stuff. And somewhere between 75 or 77, something clicked. And I found out these people made money drawing superheroes. And I go, well, that sounds pretty cool.
Mhm.
When they were building the apartments across the street from me, I said, I want to be a construction worker. And once they finished building the apartments, I completely forgot about it. It might have been at the same time, the old John Buscema classes
Mhm.
that I did right away for. And when we got the information, my family said, yeah, that's not happening. It was just way out of our budget. So, but yeah, at that point, I figured I could make a living at this.
Mhm.
And then might have been my sister or a teacher or somebody said, yeah, you can be a commercial illustrator and do comic books. And yeah, it's just, it's like put pieces together,
Mhm.
which lead to Marvel and DC, etc.
Now, I had read that as a 16-year-old, you were an intern at Marvel.
Yes,
Wow.
this is true. Yeah. I The New York City school system had some program that basically they would send high school students to real offices, if you would call Marvel a real office, basically to work for the semester, and you got school credit. Why? So some people would go to CBS or IBM.
Mhm.
I wound up at Marvel. Before that, I had been going to DC as part of DC's new talent program.
Mhm.
So a friend at school told me he was going to see Ernie Colon at DC. And I said, huh? Like, what? And he told me the details. And I said, really? Okay. So I called up DC. I spoke to Ernie, showed him my portfolio. And basically, Ernie would give me little assignments. So it'd say, like, do 2 pages per next week or whatever day it was. And he would critique them. And that lasted maybe a year or two, because I was still doing that when I started at Marvel.
Right.
And while I was going to see Ernie, I asked him, does DC have a internship program? Mm-hmm. And he said no. Later, I found out that I think Mike Carlin said he was the last of the interns.
Wow.
He broke the program or something. But then I hear they brought it back years after I did my thing. So I said, okay, fine. So I will go to Marvel. And I did the usual, interview with Shooter's assistant. And yeah, so it was, I guess, from February of 83 through June of 83.
Okay.
Xeroxing, running errands, occasional production work when they needed us, although I would always wander into the bullpen and just kind of hang around and go, do you need help? Do you need help, Danny? You need help? That would be Danny Crest. You need help? He says, yeah, do this thing. And then Jim's assistant, our boss, would come and say, what are you doing? I'm doing pay stubs. Did Danny ask you to do pay stubs? Like, well, yeah, after I asked him. It's like, you guys have all that work to do. Like, okay, all right. I'll be right there. So, yes, I was an intern at Marvel.
Was the reality of what goes on at DC and Marvel different from what you had in mind?
I didn't have anything in mind.
Okay.
I was 15, 16. I had no idea of how any of this stuff really, I mean, I knew how comics were made. Mm-hmm. I knew there was a writer, a penciler, an inker, etc. I knew how that stuff from reading the fanzines and going to conventions and just soaking the stuff up. But as far as an actual office, no. But I guess, when you hang around people and you go to their jobs and stuff, you figure, okay, well, this is how things work. There's a boss and secretaries, or this guy does that thing and this guy does that thing and this lady does that thing. And yeah, then you figure out, okay, these people are in charge of subscriptions. These people are in charge of circulation and production and finance. And so I guess, it was all new to me.
Right.
I had no experience out there.
Did you pursue to be an inker, or did you want to be a penciler and they, had you do some inking? How did that all come about?
I think I pursued inking.
Okay.
Because I remember going to Ernie saying I wanted to ink, and he said, no, you're gonna be a cartoonist, you're gonna be a well-rounded cartoonist, etc. So he wanted me to pencil pages. And that was fine. I just felt, and even to this day, I feel I draw well. Mm-hmm. I draw well enough. I don't know if for comics, if I draw fast enough. Mm-hmm. And then comes that block of, well, if I was asked to do Batman or Spider-Man, wow, that sounds exciting. And then you think, you mean I got to draw a Batmobile all the time? And bat tanks and planes and all these buildings. Then it becomes like, oh, well, maybe I'm happy being part of the process. I don't know. It's okay. It's I did pencil samples through those internship years, mm-hmm. and later. And as things happen, you just get busy doing other things, and then that kind of falls to the wayside. So then you just, you're busy inking, so I'll just keep doing that.
It's like is you do it so well, and you've been in the business for 40 plus years. I mean, you got to be doing something right when you're doing the inking.
I would hope so. I mean, I'm thinking it's like, yeah, I mean, I see there's somebody on Facebook that posts like, oh, 40, 45 years ago, these comics came out. I go, I don't remember those. Jeez, was that 40 years ago? Oh my God.
I want to talk about some specific books you worked on, but for you personally, as an artist, are there certain books or projects you were on that you see as sort of like evolutionary points for yourself that, okay, I learned this on this book and I took it and it helped me become a better artist, and then, different things along the way?
Yeah. I mean, and it's not always art related.
Mhm.
Um, I was going through some of my old work last week and I came across my first assignment was Solo of Avengers.
Mhm.
And that was a split book. So it was, what is it? 8 pages, 11 pages, 11 pages
Mhm.
of Hawkeye and 11 pages of another Avenger. So I was doing the Hawkeye part. And that was fine. I was doing that while I was still in school. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. The minute I got out of school, I got Action Comics when it was the weekly.
Mhm.
And I don't remember how many chapters they had in the book, but I had the Green Lantern chapter. And that was also 8 to 11 pages every week, which sounds these days, it's not a problem. But back then, doing 8 pages without fail to be turned in every Friday, I was sweating bullets.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, this is so much work. This is so much work. And after, I think it was 6 chapters, 6 issues, I just went, I go, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. I'm exhausted.
Mhm.
I'm beat. So that I learned how to pace myself, how to see it since I'm the inker and they need it on a certain day, how to time my work, how to pace my work. I learned things on Superman and the Flash that I look now and I go, wow, I would have done that really differently. And that was a good experiment, but okay. And I tried things. Um, Working with Mike Waringo, we discussed things that, he wasn't happy with the job. I found out. I hear you're not happy with the job. He says, no, no. Well, didn't they tell you? It's like, no, they didn't. They didn't. It's like, yeah, it's too thin. It's too thin. Yes, he's right. It's too thin because Mike has a very cartoony look. I was approaching it a little too thin. So then I said, well, then I'm going to be inking with like, instead of a 3 brush, I'm a 4 or 5. And I just made everything thicker. And like, how's that? That's much better. Okay. So now, so yeah, you every job, you learn a little something
Mhm.
that you can be a little tighter, a little looser, a little this, a little that, or you learn how to navigate the daily grind of the business and just doing the work.
You mentioned just now conversation with artists, and we speak to different folks, and I think as fans, we think that the writer talks to the artist, and the artist, talks to the anchor, and this and that. There's all this line of communication. It seems like that's not always the case. Did you like having a good line of communication with the artist, or did you like just sort of getting the work and putting your own spin on it?
Uh, Usually communicating.
Mhm.
There are some jobs where they're last minute jobs, or maybe it's one issue or half an issue or whatever, and editorial just wants it done. So you don't have time to really think of how you're going to approach this, all this kind of stuff. But I certainly spoke with Stuart plenty. I spoke with Pia and Mike about stuff. And after a while, you get that dance.
Mhm.
where, well, they're on a time crunch. So by page 22, they're just kind of want to get it done. And they kind of go, yeah, I know what Jose's going to do. So I'll just, and they let you, it's, you're finding that dance. So in Pia's case, she kind of, our drawing styles are pretty similar in a sense. So, she kind of stumbles something in and like, yeah, okay, that's fine. That I'll go to town on that. And Mike knew, or Stuart, that I would clean up something. You don't have to have Superman's S 100% accurate. You just kind of ballpark it in, and we'll clean it up.
Now, is it your job to adapt to their style of penciling, or do you think it's your job to take your style to enhance what they've done?
That's a hard question. I guess I'm not one of the. I don't think of myself as one of the overpowering inkers. I probably have been at times. But I think the idea is to take what they've done. You can't leave yourself out of it. You have to bring in yourself, but enhance it so that, yeah, it hits that magic level so that you can try. I don't know how to say it, but it's just you follow their line, you follow their lead. And I think it was, Joe might not remember this. This would have been Joe Rubenstein back in the day. He said something like, you follow what the penciler puts down unless you find it morally offensive. So, okay. So generally you just follow what the penciler puts down, unless they've, put 6 fingers on a hand and you fix, or the anatomy is completely wonky, or the perspective is completely wonky, and you fix it. But generally you follow their lead. And if a penciler like Stewart back in the day, or even what he's doing today, or Luca Rossi on House of Mystery, they're very graphic. And it's not my place to say, well, your style is very graphic. I think I should put like a whole bunch of gradations and textures and all this. I was like, I don't think that's my place.
Good.
At least not on that job. If it was a different job where we've discussed it, maybe, but not on those jobs. They weren't breakdowns.
I want to jump to the Flash because you had a long run on the book. How was it? Did you apply to be on the Flash? Did they come to you and say, hey, would you like this opportunity?
No. I remember I was finishing up Time Masters.
Okay.
Yeah, the book that probably the two of us read. And I remember Bob Greenberger saying, we've got a new book for you. How about The Flash? I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's, he says, it's not in danger of being canceled. Yeah, I would hope not. And I'm a young kid, so sure, I'm on The Flash.
Is it intimidating at all?
I don't know. I don't think of it like that. I don't think of the characters as being intimidating. I think of it as exciting and thrilling. And oh boy, I get to do Batman, Superman, The Flash. Not to knock Greg or Mike or anybody else, but I wasn't particularly intimidated by their work. When I was probably young and stupid. If it had been penciled by Carmine Infantino or John Romita or Gene Colan, then I would be intimidated. Then I kind of go, oh, I don't know what to do. How about if I just follow each line, which I did on a Ditko job.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was a issue of Speedball.
Okay.
For some reason was running late, and they got a bunch of us to ink it, and I might have done 2 or 3 pages, literally like a handful of pages. And that was at the time where they Ditko was penciling, and he was also doing ROM,
Yep.
and they were getting all kinds of inkers to do all kinds of things on Ditko's pencils on ROM. No, I just followed what he put down. Look what he put down. I don't know what else to do. Should I add black? I don't know what the other inkers are doing.
Right.
So I'm just going to do classic Ditko, in my way, but I'm not going to go crazy with blacks or textures or zips, any of that stuff. So there's intimidating. Inking Romita was intimidating, but inking the other guys, no offense to them, it's not the same. It's not the
same. I don't think they'd be too offended by that. I think,
yeah.
It's funny. I asked Greg LaRoe because I've had him on. I said, when you're doing the Flash, how difficult is it? And this is for you as well. This is a character who's, for the most part, constantly in motion, but you have to slow it down to have word balloons, stuff like that. How do you draw and how do you capture somebody who is constantly in motion?
I felt that the main drawing should usually be solid. I basically followed Infantino's lead.
Okay.
So the main figure, the main drawing is pretty solid, and everything else is just an outline, a trace of that. As time went on, I did a couple of extra tricks with the speed lines and stuff. And now thinking back, I might try it differently. Now, if I were penciling the book, I would have different things to think about. I remember like these discussions with Mark Waid at the time or other people. I was just like, why is the Flash always running? Isn't he the fastest man alive? Shouldn't he just like walk there? why does he always need to be running? It's just one of those wacky things that I come up with. Like, well, why is he doing that? I should not try to bring logic into comic books.
No, I think it's a wall sometimes.
Yeah.
But you just said something that's interesting because, you're on some projects and there's got to be times when, because, you're a very good penciler as well. You're thinking to yourself, I could probably do this a little better than what I'm seeing on the page. Is that frustrating at all?
It has been on a few jobs, but again, it's not my place to, the penciler has been hired for a reason. So let's say they find a new kid. It's like, again, I'll fix the perspective. I'll fix some things of clarity. But I'm not about to start redrawing arms or facial expressions. It's really not my place. We all know of stories of inkers that have done that. If you're Bill Sienkiewicz or Kevin Nolan, you can get away with it. Otherwise, stay in your lane.
Right.
Don't, unless you have that relationship with a penciler where you just feel like, yeah, I'm just gonna, completely go to town, and I see your X-Men poster behind you. I'm like, well, I think we should have, Storm's arms outstretched with her cape bigger or whatever. It's not my place.
Right.
I might tweak a tangent here or there. I might move a leg off so it won't look like it's touching somebody's head or whatever. But I'm not about to start doing wholesale redrawing and re-renderings.
You had a long run on the Flash. Do you like having the security of knowing you're going to be on the book for a while, or did you like sort of, because you've also done done shots here and there? Do you kind of like moving on and doing a variety of different works?
Uh, I like the security and the consistency.
Mhm.
Um, I don't particularly get bored
Mhm.
that easy. Um, and it takes a while. Again, it takes a while to figure out the penciler,
Mhm.
and it takes a while for the penciler to figure out the inker, to figure out the writers, and to get into that rhythm. So 3 months, 6 months, that's when you're just finally starting to get into it. And if it's done, like that's it. I mean, which is okay if it's a mini series, but if it's an ongoing, okay, well that's all we needed. But we're just starting. we're just starting. We're just starting our 5, 6, 7 year opus. um, it's good. Otherwise, you don't have an investment.
Mhm.
You haven't. I don't know. I don't feel like I have an investment if I do 2 issues of the Flash, as an example, or 1 issue of the Legion,
Mhm.
or 3 issues of the Hulk. I don't feel any affinity to the character anymore.
Right.
The Flash and Superman were not necessarily characters that were always at the top of my favorite characters list. But after how many years on the Flash or Superman, then you kind of go, that's my character now. It's I'm part of the Flash, family because I was on it for a long period. So thankfully, I don't know. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it kind of leads into my next question, which was, when did you feel confident that you belonged in the industry, that you said this is the right choice and I belong, I'm good at what I do?
Uh Probably 1983.
Yeah.
I uh, as soon as I started getting work, making money, I felt I belonged in the industry.
Right.
I felt that I knew what I was doing. I felt that at least it was a competent job
Mhm.
back then. Editors would call me for work, so I'm like, yeah, that's good. And then there's the thing of like, well, I don't know what else to do. I can't do surgery. I don't, I can cook the basics. I don't know if I'm going to be hired at some fancy restaurant. I'm not a mechanic, God knows.
So, you stick with what you know.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Why The Last Man comes
Yeah.
to your life and a spotlight is suddenly on you because you have the Eisner Awards. This book is getting a lot of notice. What was that a different kind of experience for you as opposed to other books you worked on?
It was, I guess it crept up on me.
Okay.
I didn't even know about the Eisners until my friends mentioned it. I do my thing. I don't generally go to the well, back then would have been the fanzines, or now it's websites and stuff. I just don't. I mean, if I wanted gossip, I would just call up, like, so what happened? What was this that I heard? But I generally don't care.
Right.
Um, and the Eisners were, a friend of mine called, oh, congratulations, you got an Eisner nomination. A what? Okay, I had no idea. Um, and that went on, and then honestly, I don't remember how I found out about the win.
Mhm.
Someone probably told me. And like, oh, well, that's cool. Actually, people had asked if I was going to the Eisners to San Diego, and I said, unless they're paying my way, no. Um, And then they said, you won. Like, oh, well, that's nice. I guess that's good. And so what happens? When do I get the awards? And I guess somebody at DC picked them up
Okay.
and shipped them to me. Um, the book was interesting in that it got a lot of press,
Mhm.
um, more than I remember my superhero books getting.
Mhm.
Maybe because we're now in the days of the internet. Maybe it was a different type of Vertigo book.
Mhm.
Um, and I started to notice I don't do a lot of conventions, but when I do them, people would come and they would say, "Oh, I love this book." Okay, thanks. People usually say that. It's very nice.
Mhm.
But there was a lot of, "Oh, I got my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my brother, whoever it was, he does not read comics at all. She does not read comics at all." And oh yes, now I love her. Oh, okay, well, thanks. And I noticed that when people ask for signatures, usually when collectors want a signature, it's usually on a pretty nice book, condition wise. These Y books were red. They were dog eared. The covers were frayed. These people are reading the book. Um, so yeah, that was very nice. It was, and I don't know if I mentioned this to Brian or Pia. I'm certainly I've told it to other people. It was the kind of thing where I took the job and I said, well, okay, this will last a year
Mhm.
because it's gonna get canceled. Because I'm that great of a judge on these things. Yeah, it's like it's a nice book, but yeah, it's like not gonna sell, and no one's gonna read it, and I'll have to hustle for something else. And it's like, oh, we're doing well. Wasn't it the after Sandman? Well, Sandman had already ended by then,
Right.
and so wasn't it the best-selling Vertigo book?
Yeah.
Or Fables? We were like neck and neck
Mhm.
or something. So yeah, that's a nice feeling, and it's been reprinted, I think, in every possible format. We have paperbacks and hardcovers and omnibus, and you know, so yeah, it's a good feeling that you know.
Did your mentality or process change doing a non-superhero book from when doing other things that you worked on?
Not really.
Okay.
Visually, not really. If anything, and this was just dumb luck, I had told myself
Mhm.
I want to do Vertigo books. I don't know if I ever mentioned that to Karen or anybody or Heidi or anybody up there at Vertigo. But I was reading the Vertigo books and coming from an artsy fartsy background, I was like, we all love superheroes, but maybe I was tired of doing guys in spandex, and I just wanted to do real regular clothing, and the Vertigo books did not have giant Jack Kirby machines and spaceships. um, and there was a lot of, for lack of a better word, gnarly work going on that you could kind of
Mhm.
scratch and just do stuff. So I was like, yeah, Vertigo. I want to do a Vertigo book. Just dumb luck.
Right.
Just dumb luck. Although then I didn't necessarily approach it
Mhm.
like that. I approached it the same way I approached the other books.
Right.
If anything, I remember Heidi McDonald, who was the first editor, said, "You can go, scratchier. You can go looser." I said, "Okay, all right, fine." I don't know if I did, but that's what she told me. And by the time we got to Goran, who had done some fill-ins, when I was inking his work, I was thinking John Romita.
Okay.
And John Romita is not exactly what you think of when you think of Vertigo.
Right.
But I told him, he says, "Oh, that's pretty interesting." Well, your work reminds me of John, so that's what I'm doing.
Was it a different environment at Vertigo than it was at, regular DC or pretty much same thing?
I didn't notice. I mean, well, by the time I got Y, I was no longer living in Manhattan.
Gotcha.
So, but I had already been a few years here in Florida doing still on Superman and other
Mhm.
various regular DC stuff.
Right.
So by the time Vertigo, I got Y, there was no, it's all the same. I mean, I guess they might say it's different. Editorially, maybe, but I mail my stuff to the same office. I get a check from the same place. I might have a different editor to deal with, but it's like, eh,
Yeah.
it's all comics. It has to read well. It has to view well.
Mhm.
It has to ship on time. So it's all the same.
That's a good point. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. I mean that
My daughter still hasn't read.
one of these days.
Yeah, one of these days.
But that's, I mean, artistically, that's a lot different than
Yeah,
things that you worked on.
right.
Um, a challenge at all, or did you fill in pretty quickly?
No, I'm like of two minds.
Mhm.
So I love doing, like I said, the Vertigo stuff.
Mhm.
And if you've seen some of my drawings on Facebook or Instagram, I just scribble away. But there's this big animation and Disney fan and inspiration. And I don't know how, and it was only like last year, how Moon Girl came about. I had done a couple of jobs for Marvel, and I think I had done one with Alba on one of their Voices book,
Mhm.
and then we did another one for the online service. Um, and then Moon Girl, like okay, and I was like, oh, you're gonna do Devil Dinosaur and Moon Girl, so I was expecting all kinds of Kirby craziness.
Right.
And then I'm like, this is not Kirby craziness at all. But it's fun. Her drawing is very cartoony,
Mhm.
and that kind of just harkens back to my old, my Disney bag of tricks.
Mhm.
And I did do Roger Rabbit,
Mhm.
the comic, for a year, something like that. Um, I even applied to the Disney studios when they opened here in Florida. So there's a lot of that stuff in my blood. So that cartoony stuff, I just think of, that's when I start thinking Carl Barks
Yeah.
and Walt Kelly and I don't know whoever else I can think of. So it's just fun. It's a different approach. I don't, I can't bring out my toothbrush and my hairbrush scrape on the page. But it's fun. I mean, it's fun, and I just wish that I wish more people had read it.
Right.
I mean, I guess some people read it, but it certainly probably didn't set the world on fire.
Right.
Um, and I wish maybe Disney. I know my daughter has seen the cartoon, but every now and then you're gonna go. They're gonna have like a ad for the comic book, right? They're gonna have an ad for the comic book, right? And they don't. Like, oh, come on.
I want to jump back to comics for a second, but you were just talking about animation. It's in your blood. It's something that you love. If that opportunity came your way, could you see pushing comics aside and pursuing that full time, or do you need comics in your life?
I applied to the Disney Studios here when they opened,
Mhm.
and you get the polite no thank you. Um, that probably would have been for an in betweener. I I say this now. I say I don't see myself animating
Mhm.
as a general animator just because I don't know if I want to do the same drawing 20 times. I mean, I get kind of bored, when you have to just rough in a figure, tighten up a figure, tighten it up some more, tighten it up some more, tighten up some more. Like, oh, I've drawn it already. It's enough. So I don't know if I see myself doing subsequent drawings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but if somebody offered me the opportunity, I'd probably try it.
Right.
I think back then, if somebody would have asked me, well, if you get this job at Disney Animation, what would you like to do? I'd probably like to be in backgrounds.
Right.
Yeah, or layout, as opposed to actual animation.
Mm-hmm.
But that style has always been, sometimes it comes and goes with my work. Sometimes I just want a clean line. Devil Dinosaur kind of brought it back up after it had been dormant for ages.
You've worked on such a variety of comics. Is there one that you think really was you at your best? Or is there one that you are so proud of that maybe doesn't get the headlines as other things that you worked on has?
Uh, I'm. I don't know if I'm partial to actual issues.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to pick section, might be. I like that graphic novel I did with Stewart, the
Mm-hmm.
Superman graphic novel, and the Century.
Okay.
Like the last year of Y,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the last 2 years of Y, artistically. Um, there are sections of the Flash here, this issue here, this, or sometimes it's even just a page. Oh, I like that page, that panel, and it's like, oh, how's the rest of it? No, no thanks, no thanks. It just I forget about some of this stuff, and then I look at it and go, it's not too bad. That's not too bad. And I was looking at some of my old stuff, like, this isn't too bad for a 19-year-old. For a 19-year-old, this isn't too bad. For a 20-year-old, like, yeah, okay. And then sometimes you just hit a wall where you just go, this job is not working.
Okay.
This issue does not work. So there was, I don't know if I should say it. There was one issue. A famous person in the comics wrote a book, and he had an excerpt. Mm-hmm. And he came by the show and like, oh yes, I have the book. It's very nice. Did you have to use that panel as an example? It's like, why? What's wrong with it? That whole issue was a mess. That whole issue was a mess. Can you please, like, if you're gonna and he said, well, we might be doing like a second edition. So if we do a second edition, I can probably change the art. I said, please. But it never happened. I'll tell you in person, but I don't want to, badmouth my product or his product. His product was excellent.
How do you know? Because you've worked on so many things that maybe something's just not right. Maybe this project's maybe just not for you. Maybe this working relationship with someone just isn't working out. What is it goes off in your mind sometimes that you say, okay, maybe I'll move on to something else?
It's happened a few times, but it's usually like on a limited basis. Like I'm filling in for a couple of issues on something, or one issue, two issues, or even a handful of pages, where you just go, this doesn't work. Right. This is not. I'm not getting this. But by that time, the job is done, and we're already on to the next thing. And then you think, okay, now for next time, I'm not going to use the number 4. I'm going to use the flat brush, right, or something like that. Who was? I know it'll come up. I know there was one penciler I inked at DC back in the early days. I was new. He was new. And it was just one pinup or a cover or something. Just go, this is not magical. This is not magical. And you do the best you can.
Mhm.
Um, and then later, that penciler's name came up in you're just standing around the office, and they said, "Oh, what about Jose?" And there was somebody else there. It's like, "Yeah, we tried that. That didn't work too well." Like, well, yeah, but it's like we could try it again and see what happens. And luckily, it's not like, no, it's okay. I'll go do the Flash or whatever I was doing
Right.
at the time.
Is it tough though to jump in on a book? Because I would think at times they'd want to keep some artistic continuity. So they'd want you to do an inking job as maybe the previous person did, or were you given like, okay, just do what you have to do?
You mean like as a like a fill-in or coming in
Yeah,
after
like yeah,
someone?
as like a fill-in.
It's never been brought up, honestly.
Okay.
Never. The only time it's been brought up was when I was working with John Romita doing art corrections, and you would have to replace a panel
Okay.
because whatever the storyline was changed, or the characters are wearing the wrong costumes, or whatever it was, and they would say, it has to match, I don't know, Bob Layton or whoever. And that was the only time. But otherwise, I've popped into the Flash, and I popped into uh, Nightwing,
Mhm.
Batgirl, and they just kind of go, "No, you just do you." Okay, I just do me. I mean, I assume they're hiring me because they know
Exactly.
what I'm going to bring.
Mhm.
That's why they're not calling Kevin Nolan or Terry Austin, right?
Right.
And so I figure.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
What's the project you always wanted to work on and never got the chance?
I've been lucky. I haven't had too many that I wanted to.
Mhm.
Um, Nothing really.
Wow.
Nothing. I mean, they're those wish lists
Right.
of, well, I never inked Gene Colan. Want to work with Gene Colan. I never inked Gil Kane, and then both of them passed away before anything. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could always say, well, I never got to work on the X-Men,
Mhm.
as a regular, because the X-Men was, the top selling book, etc. But I'm sure everyone kind of says like would like that.
Right.
Um, but no, I guess I'm okay. Yeah,
Yep. That's a
yeah,
good place to be.
yeah. Still haven't done anything really on Spider-Man, but
Okay.
or a long run on Wonder Woman, but there's still time.
I was going to say there's still plenty of time.
Yeah, I'm still young-ish.
So what's coming up now? What are some projects you're working on? What are some things that you're doing?
I was just talking about this with my wife. There are no projects.
Oh,
There are. I am completely dry. There is nothing on the drawing board. Um, or that drawing board. Um, so honestly, I have nothing on the table. If any of your listeners need an Eisner winning reliable inker, feel free to call. I'm easy to find.
hmm
I'll be happy to talk.
That's with so many, and you see it too on Facebook and stuff like that. People doing their own comics, the Kickstarters and
Yeah.
GoFundMe's. Could you see doing that yourself, putting together your own book?
I had that conversation with a friend a long time ago, and something like, "Oh, you should write." He's a editor writer,
Right.
and I said, I have nothing to say. And he says, "Oh, you have plenty to say. You're always talking about this stuff." Like, no, I'm talking about silly things like, where does Superman keep his boots when he has his suit, his city clothes on? That's the kind of stuff I bring up. I don't have any ideas about a story arc or any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
I will never say never these days, because yeah, I mean, there's always, you can self-publish stuff, you can do stuff on online, on your own website, on Substack, on Instagram, whatever. Um, yeah, if work doesn't come my way, maybe I will have to write the great American novel in comic form. Of course, I'll have to find something to say.
That'll happen.
So yeah, I've worked with other guys on their projects here and there, but nothing of mine. I'm just like not, there are always guys who have their basket of ideas and to tell stories, but Sal Buscema I don't think Sal Buscema's ever in the book, has he?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. Then put me in that camp. Like, I don't have anything to write about. Not yet, anyway.
And we are back. Wasn't he a nice guy? I really, really enjoyed this conversation. He worked on so many different things. For me personally, his work on Peter Cannon Thunderbolt with Mike Collins is absolutely wonderful. That's one of those comics that sort of flew under the radar in the 90s, but it was so well done. It was so much fun. And Jose was such a part of that. And it was so nice to see his career just, keep going up, 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 up with these higher profile works that he's been on. So Jose, thank you so much. Love to have you back on and talk some more about your career, because I know we just only scratched the surface with the stuff that you have been involved in. So thank you again. And for you guys, please, 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 please head over to the CBC Awards. That is www.cbcawards.org and vote for the Dollar and Bandits. Vote for all the wonderful shows out there too, but please vote for us. We'd really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time.